The first chapter discusses the most obvious question at one level, the question why? Why do we reach out to the world with the fabulous news of Jesus? It may seem too obvious to devote a whole chapter to it, but I honestly think that even people whose professional life is about promoting the gospel, me for instance, need to be reminded of the biblical basis of our mission to the world. I remember in my early days as a full-time evangelist in a local church, I was in my favourite cafe down at a beautiful beach in Sydney, speaking with a good pastor friend of mine about what we were doing in my church to reach out to others with the gospel. And I noticed this woman sitting at a table a couple away from us, and she was looking at me really inquisitively. I assumed she was a Christian, interested to hear what we were doing to reach out to others. And eventually she got up from her chair, she went over, she paid her bill, and walked up to my table in this packed cafe, and at what seemed like the top of her voice, she said, "So you want to convert the world, do you? How dare you?" And then off she stormed. It was one of those moments where you think of the perfect comeback a couple of hours too late. At the time, I was dumbfounded. Here I was, a full-time evangelist in the local church, theologically trained, with no reply. And for that brief moment, as I sat in that cafe, I wondered about the beauty and logic of our mission to the world. And I honestly think, if you've been a Christian a while, you will have stopped and asked, is this really a kind of fundamentalist thing? Is it a narrow-minded thing, our reaching out to others for the gospel? Or is it something of logic and beauty? And so I think it's important in the first chapter to wind back and start with the question, why? Why do we reach out? There are all sorts of perfectly good biblical answers. Like you could say, we reach out to others because we're terrified that our friends and neighbours will fall under the judgment of God. And that would be true. Or we could say simply, well, Jesus commanded us in the Great Commission to go out into all the world. And that'd be true as well. And some people would say, well, we just love Jesus so much, we want to just, talk about him. And that would be true as well. But I honestly think there is in Scripture, both Old and New Testaments, a more fundamental rationale for reaching out to others, a most basic reason that undergirds our evangelistic activity. And it's simply this: there is one Lord to whom all people belong and owe their allegiance. And so the people of the Lord must promote this reality everywhere. So what I'm saying is, we're principally involved not just in a rescue mission, but in a reality mission. It's about the people who know who the one true Lord is, spreading that knowledge wherever they can. And you find this theme in lots of the Psalms of the Old Testament, and you'll come across Psalm 96 in this chapter, where Israel is told to declare the praises of the Lord amongst all the nations for the very simple reason that there's just one Lord. It's not two, there's just one. And that's the reason to reach out to the nations. Then if you track it into the New Testament, the Great Commission, the most famous passage about our mission, Jesus says, go into all the world, make disciples of all nations, right? But immediately before that, he says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go into the world. In other words, it's because there's one Lord who has heaven and earth in his hands, which doesn't leave much for anyone else. It's because of that he sends us out with that reality, because we know that there's one Lord to whom all people belong and owe their allegiance. And so we, the people who know the Lord, do what we can, however we can, to spread the knowledge of him throughout the world.